One of the questions that we got, and we were talking about the Nephilim, I don't recall the show precisely or the date, but I do recall an email from a woman who asked a question, and I'll let you answer this, what your thoughts are with regard to this particular question. In fact, I printed it out and saved it for tonight, knowing you'd be on. L.A., with respect to the giants, are giants used in every sense of the word, okay? And are they alive today? If they are, where are they? Why aren't we seeing them? What do you say to people who ask these questions?
Well, we know that a lot of the remains, let me put it to you this way. The so-called Hopewell culture, which a lot of the graves that were exhumed 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet, okay, somewhere in there, 9-footers. Let's just round it up to 9-footers. That culture's 3,000 years ago, and they vanish and no one knows where they went. Cahokia, same thing. Paracas, same thing. And Paracas culture dies off around 2,000 years. No one knows what happened to them. They just kind of vanish. No one knows. They're here for a period of time. They vanish. They're gone. The fallen one, Satan, is very, very interested in the human genome. And this is where the whole idea of multiple incursions come in. He's trying to create man in his own image, combined with the giantism. And I was just recently in a private museum about a month and a half ago, which will be included in On the Trail 3. We saw very, very tiny artifacts, extremely tiny artifacts for small people, really small people, and like 2-foot small people, okay? And this ties right in with the Cherokee legends, that this race was there alongside the giants. And of course, all this to academia is just laughable. Oh, these axe heads are for children. Oh, really? Says who? Because you say it is? When the Native Americans give us a completely different story. Well, the Native Americans don't have a written language, LA, so we just can't believe anything that they say. Well, says who? Says you, the white man? Because you know, we have a written language, and you're looking at all this stuff, and you've got a PhD after your name, and that means that you know everything on the planet? Is that why we should believe you, and not the Native American oral tradition, which tells us that there's a race of very tiny little people, and now we find artifacts that seem to back this up? I mean, you know, we find 27.5-pound axe heads, other axe heads that are way too heavy. We find mauls, which will be in On the Trail 3, that use to break up flint, which weigh 35, 40 pounds. You know, you really want to pick that rock up, bring it over your head, and smash it down on a flint pit. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you. I mean, come on. The evidence is there, and it's starting to stack up. But see, it goes against the Darwinian paradigm. And Darwinism is still very much in high esteem and basically sacrosanct in academia and the scientific community. Ben Stein's movie, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, explores this in just an incredible, erudite way. And if you have not seen that movie, you need to go rent that movie after the show and see what Darwinism is really responsible for. And go back into the early part of the 20th century and see the eugenics and Planned Parenthood and how the one race is inferior to the other. Go back and look at all that. That's all from Darwinism, which, of course, that's a dirty little secret. Oh, we just cleaned all that up, and it's really okay now. Oh, is it really? It's not. Survival of the fittest, that's where Hitler, a strong case could be made that Hitler used Darwinism and used the idea of survival of the fittest to pin the Jew as a vermin, as a scapegoat for all of Germany's ills, as you know, a life that was not worth life at all, and that's why the Holocaust. And that's what Stein explores in his groundbreaking documentary, Expelled. And here we are. And we're proving, not conclusively yet, but so far, the evidence is pointing to the biblical narrative as being the correct one, that there is a creator, there is a cosmic chess match going on, in another realm, in another dimension. These entities are vying for position. It goes back to Genesis 3. Your seed will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. And that's exactly what we see. Why should we be surprised when all of a sudden the Bible is comes alive and the evidence is everywhere? Why should we be surprised by this? Why should some of us feel threatened?
Fantastic summation. It's almost as if you're giving a not your closing argument, but it certainly sounds like that because again, look at what's going on. Something caught my eye. I got to tell you, something caught my eye besides that wonderful picture on your blog about Monday mornings. That was me about 4:00 this morning, folks. Anyway, a couple of things caught my eyes. Caught my attention here. You had mentioned. Well, I got two questions. Well, before I hit the question I was going to ask you just now, let me go back into something you said earlier. You said about having, a woman being pregnant, missing time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, unless I missed it, did you say that there was a birth did occur or not? Did you confirm any of that?
They took it.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear about that. They took it. Okay.
They took it, and that's what we're trying to prove. Yeah, they took it. That's what we're trying to prove. We're working on that.
All right. I didn't want to close this hour out without kind of getting clarification on that. And all right, because when you say they, go ahead.
ET. First of all, we have the placenta, believe it or not. And we're going to get that tested. We're going to take DNA samples from it. We're going to take it to a forensic pathologist. And if there's anyone listening who is a forensic pathologist, please email me at la@lamarzulli.net. But the woman's doctor looked at the pictures and said there's no way that there was a child there. She was taken about 10 to 12 weeks after she was pregnant, which is classic.
Oh.
That's in the first trimester. I've written about that extensively. I've talked to other people about this happening. That's when they come back and abduct the female and then take the baby. And then you think you've miscarried, but there's no embryo, there's no fetus, there's nothing there, just the placenta.
And I've got a number of questions with respect to that tactic, not with this specific case, but the tactic of which you described. But I'll save them until after the top of the hour. Folks, we're talking with our very special guest, Mr. L.A. Marzulli. I got to tell you, if you go to just go to Hagman & Hagman, click on the link. It'll take you directly to L.A.'s site, lamarzulli.net. That's lamarzulli.net. And if you go to the store section, I cannot think of a better buy here, especially for Christmas, for Christmas gifts or whatever holiday gift you might want to give. For example, on the Trail of the Nephilim,
lamarzulli.net. And LA, I don't know if you are familiar with this. I know you've been doing a lot of research and getting the book out and then doing a lot of interviews explaining what's in the book. But the government, as well as other big business corporations, have been doing a lot of human genome studies. Also, one here, towards a new history and geography of human genes informed by ancient DNA. And in some of these publications, they talk about accessing information through ancient DNA, and the work is being done by MIT, Harvard, Department of Biological Sciences at Columbia, the Department of Genetics at Harvard, New York Genome Center, New York City, Howard Hughes Medical Institution, and Harvard Medical School, Boston. The list goes on. But what they say is that the genetic information contains a record of the history of the species, and new technologically advanced science mechanisms have transformed the ability to access these records. And they go on to also state that not only can they use this information to see where the original location or the ancestry leads into the distant past, but they also go on to say that there is other information being able to be unlocked in the DNA. And I'll state one example that they use here, actual memories of a person. Well, so let's say my father, someone extracts DNA from him and he gives it to me, his son, and all of a sudden I have all the understanding and information and memories he had. Have you heard anything along these lines in your research?
Well, yes. Let me put it to you this way. Gary Stearman, a couple of conferences ago, I forget where we were, maybe in Orlando, Gary and I were, talking about what On the Trail 2 was, and the things, the Grout Glidden photographs on Catalina, and the six-fingered skeletons, and just all the stuff, and the stuff we saw in Peru, the skeletons in Peru, and we were just discussing things, and we were just alone. And Gary looked at me and said, L.A., you can be sure that they, and we both knew who they were, that they already know about this and already have taken this DNA samples from this stuff, and they've already analyzed it to see what it is. And the light bulb went off, and we know that some of these very large, elongated skulls are being sold in the black market. One of them in particular, there's a dealer apparently in Belgium who is buying these things. They go on the black market for about $1,000 a pop. And, Belgium, you could make a strong case, is a hotbed of occult activity in Europe. And why are the skulls being bought by this guy and being shipped back there? The shamans in Peru and in Bolivia place a great importance on these elongated skulls. They know that there's power there. And, that's a whole other conversation to get into. When we are there on these sites, walking through these graveyards, we pray before, during, and afterwards. We don't. It's not a cavalier, a couple of guys with a six-pack of brew on a frat party or something, going tomb robbing. It's not what's going on here. We hold all these sites with a certain respect and awe. Too far to go reverence, because we're not sure what we're looking at, but we have a great deal of respect wherever we go. And Brian in particular, and so obviously Senior One, anything that we have found, and we found 3 very large elongated skulls the last time I was at Chongos. The Wakaros got spooked, literally, and fled the scene. And I discovered one, and the moment we got up to it, Brian had already ran up the hill and was there. He found 2 more, and that's where the grave had been just opened up. Very, very shallow grave, 3 feet, 2 or 3 feet. So it's at the end of the Paracas era, and those skulls made it into the new book. But they are now, all 3 of them, are for the Peruvian people. They are all resting safely in Senior Juan Navarro's Paracas Historical Society. And that's what's at stake here. So, that's
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and you state that very, very nicely. I don't know what people think, for example, about your archaeological digs. I like how you said, it's not just a thrown together type thing. You approach this with a great deal of seriousness and reverence, and you do pray before, during, and after. And I think that's very important, especially with what you're dealing with. You're dealing with some very dark issues. And you mentioned this collector out of Belgium. Obviously, I think we can make the conclusion, or certainly without making a conclusion, I think we could strongly suspect what's going on there. But
yeah,
how do you know? When you say black market, is there a Craigslist for these things?
No.
I guess people in the know, kind of like drug dealers, they know where to go, right? Or drug addicts know where to go to find the dealers. I suppose it's the same way, right?
And Yeah, I mean, it's very subversive, very bizarre, I'm sure. It's a world which I don't know anything about and really, frankly, don't want to enter into it. Very seedy, very bizarre. But some of these people were using these objects, we believe, and when I say we, I know Russ Dizdar and I have talked about this, and we believe they are using them in occult practices. That's what we think is going on.
Okay, and speaking of Russ, and if we might, I'd like to do a little bit of a change up here, because on your blog, folks, go to lamarzulli.net and of course visit his blog. He's got a wonderful picture from Monday morning musings with Marzulli. One of the entries, in fact, the second entry for today, is something I just want to touch upon to the extent that you feel comfortable with and you want to take it.
Sure.
Katy Perry performing at the next Super Bowl, the halftime show. We all know, folks who listen to the show, we know that we are being bathed in occult symbolism, and that Super Bowl halftime show is kind of like a, definitely up there in terms of something that's watched, and by watching it, we are almost unwitting participants in this kind of dark arts, black magic, if you will, and Katy Perry is certainly a poster child for that. What do you make of this? Of all of the entertainers, and we see Katy Perry coming onto the scene quite heavily. Last time she did Dark Horse with. I can't remember the artist's name, but if you want to call him that. But, it seems like it's all of these are incantations almost. I mean, and we're seeing an upsurge in this, aren't we? I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Chuck Missler refers to a managed agenda, a carefully managed agenda. And that's exactly what's going on. All of this, every bit of it, is managed. They know exactly what they're doing. It's we're so far down the rabbit hole. It's sort of embarrassing. What I mean by that is the church thinks everything is hunky dory for the most part, although other aspects of the church and pastors are waking up. Hallelujah! But a lot of it is still slumbers. Meanwhile, Katy Perry's at the look. A couple of years ago when Madonna was there, I'm at this so-called Christian Super Bowl party, right? And I like to go for the little mini weenies, love those things, okay? And, I never know who's playing until probably 2 or 3 days before. And, okay, and I pick one team and root for it. And, I watch the game and it's over, right? So the halftime thing is there, and Madonna's doing her thing. And I'm sitting there going, this is in your face, Illuminati, sex magic. I can't believe I'm looking at this. And I look over, and all the girls who, are well over 40 at this point because they grew up with Madonna, they're all lip-syncing the lyrics. Just singing right along. And it's going right over their head. And it's like, are you kidding me? So it'll be interesting to see what Katy Perry does. There is a carefully managed agenda. It is anti-Christian all the way. You cannot mention the J word anywhere. The whole thing with Merry Christmas. And look, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. I get it. Please don't write me with the whole Saturnalia stuff. I get it. I understand all that. But Christmas for millions and millions of Christians the world over, we celebrate his birth. That's what it is to us. We're celebrating the birth of the Messiah. Okay? And yeah, it's gotten commercialized. Yeah, it's wacky. I'm doing the same thing on my blog. Holiday special, Christmas special, blah, blah, blah. We all do it. We're in the world, hopefully not of it. But the reason why we're doing it, and look, other authors are doing the same thing. You give a person an armor trail of a Nephilim too, you're gonna rock the world. You give them a Watcher's set, you're gonna rock their world. Trust me, you're gonna rock their world. You give them a calendar. The conversation is going to start. And that's what we want. Because a lot of times you can't go, it says in Matthew 24. You can't do that. They don't want to listen. But you hand them a Watcher's set or a book, and it doesn't have to be my stuff. It can be, Chris Putnam's book, Exo Vaticana, Oh my gosh, if you got a Catholic family, that would get people talking. Hello? That's what it's about. You know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You know what? You keep guys like Chris Putman and and myself writing and doing what we're doing, because when you buy the book, guess what? Now we got money to write another one. And a workman's entitled to his wages. And that's what we're doing. It's all for the king. Every bit of it, it's all for the king. That's who it all points back to. He's coming again, and he's coming soon. In the meantime, we're here. We're slogging away in the trenches. There's nobody, we've got no sugar daddy necessarily for the Watchers series. Richard Shaw and I have produced all of those on our own nickel. And we plow back a lot of the money that we make through the shows. By the way, we sold 90,000 DVDs. 90,000 DVDs.
That's incredible.
Pretty cool. 90,000 watching DVDs. Thank you. It actually should have a couple of zeros, and that's just our little marketing thing. And you get on some big shows like Sid Roth, who I think did, he bought probably close to 10,000 DVDs from us when he was done. And that show, that half-hour show, is his number 2 watch show in the history of Sid Roth Ministries. It's almost a million hits. Go figure. We found the Nephilim, and there it is.
And folks, you can be part of this as well. Show LA that we can make an impact, and I'd like to think that we do, certainly from tonight's show. If you take advantage of these holiday specials, and yes, I said holiday, but take advantage of them because they're well worth it. I'll say that. I love your calendar, by the way. I do. I love the Watchers calendar. I've got one here for 2015.
Cool,
yeah, it really is a great idea. So, folks, do take advantage. And I can guarantee you, when LA says it'll rock your world, it does. The research, the amount of information, and the conclusion or the suggestions that you will find, the conclusions that you will come to, and rightfully so, based on the evidence submitted, will shake your paradigm. And I think that this is what it's all about. And you know what? I can feel we're all getting close. When you've got Chris Putnam and others, Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, Tim Alvarino, I'm trying to think, lots of people coming to the table with their research product. You've got this synchronicity, if you will, and it really makes what's written in the Bible, at least to me, come alive, and it really has contemporaneous impact upon me. In other words, the Bible is not just a book of history, but there's this contemporaneous factor to it, and it helps you to understand. At least it helps me. Your work and others helps me to understand not only why we're here, but what we need to do, while we're here, and also it puts things in perspective. You've got a great way of doing that through your writings, and Paul McGuire too, and others, Bill Salas, with geopolitical events with respect to Israel. So all of this, I don't want to dominate, but I just have to say that I think that what we're seeing now through the explosion, through the internet, and this explosion of knowledge is really, to me, bringing things really close together. And that's, by the way, how's that affecting the other side, the dark side, the Illuminati, the Luciferians? That's got to be making them step up their game as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. They know that time is short. They know they're waiting for their prince to come. I believe he's already here and walking perhaps among us. Who knows? Again, go back to Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's book, Exo Vaticana. Just incredible. And the Vatican is sort of bracing themselves for an alien savior, which is bizarre to even think about. I mean, here we are talking about this stuff. It's incredible. And the fact that information, you mentioned the internet, the fact that information is shared at the speed of light, the speed of light. In other words, when the Fukushima reactor goes off and the tidal wave, the big 9.0 Fukushima earthquake, right? And it rocks Japan, and the tidal wave comes in. We're watching live live coverage of that from a helicopter bouncing it off the satellite. That's live. That's live. That's the world we live in. You know, you get an 8.0 earthquake or something, and my iPhone goes ding, ding, ding. When they're launching rockets from Gaza into Israel, I have an app on my phone that's from Israel. It's called Red Alert. And when the war was going on several weeks back, that thing was going off all day long, man. Precisely at the moment when the war was going on.
It's difficult
I have to wait
to
for the 6 o'clock news.
right, and think. Yeah, I mean, think back to even the Walter Cronkite era when we were hamstrung to the 6 o'clock news. Now we know things right away or as they're happening. And I can compare that to your work with respect to the Nephilim and how this really, you know, going back to your book and the Nephilim and the Watchers series and all of this, if people would just use their intellectual capacity, use their mind, people just think, what, you know, the impact that this information, the information that you are and have uncovered to where we are today, what's taking place today. I got a question from a listener listening live right now in your area, your neck of the woods on the West Coast, who wants to know your feelings with respect to when we went into Iraq, Babylon, did we leave with any type of, well, anything extra, shall we say, any extra DNA, any extra artifacts? Did we remove anything? That's from Kathleen, wanting to know that, listening live. Hi, Kathleen, and I'll let L.A. answer that. Well,
I defer back to Tom on this one because, you know, Tom certainly wrote about that. I concur with Tom's finding. I think Steve Quayle also talked a little bit about what was going on there. It's bizarre when we actually go back and we look at what happened with the Bush administration and the whole 9/11 thing. I mean, that's like a 3-hour conversation in itself. But I bought the party line till someone read my Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural book and said, you know, L.A., you really need to do more research on 9/11, because when PPNS came out in 2006 or 7, whatever it was, I think it was 7, I believed in the party line, you know, 9/11 and, you know, the whole deal. And then they sent me Building 7, and the whole theory just collapsed. No pun intended. I just thought, you've got to be kidding me. Then I started doing more research and then found, you know, 9/11 truthers were 1,500 architects and engineers looking at this thing going, this is, you know, buildings don't collapse like this. Sorry, folks. You know, you can tap dance all you want, but something's real fishy here. And then, of course, Building 7, every year at the anniversary, I show that clip, which shows Building 7 basically imploding at free fall speed, which, again, is a physical impossibility for a building to collapse like that. Buildings don't collapse that way into its own footprint. So 9/11 is a staged event by a dark, satanic, hidden government. And to say that on radio anywhere brings certain consequences with it and lots of ridicule. But the evidence is overwhelming that something's going on. Nanothermite, dustification, I mean, all these, when you watch the towers go down, you watch them disintegrate as they're collapsing. You watch them disintegrate. Something is going on there. Some weapons, scalar technology, I don't know. But we go into Afghanistan, no, let's go get those Afghans, blah, 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 you know. Then I get the Taliban, and, you know, Bush does this thing, you know, if you're either with us or you're with the terrorists, that whole deal. And it's just like, you got to be kidding me. And then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, we go to Iraq. It's like, what? When that happened, I just went, what? What is he thinking? Look, Saddam and his sons were bloodthirsty, luciferic, demonically enhanced, you know, probably almost possessed fully human beings. The stuff that they did, thank God they're off the planet, all three of them. I mean, they reinvented the word barbarian. But Why did we go in there? And think of the absolute mess we've created when ISIL, which I will not refer to it as Islamic State, or, whoa, what was that? Oops, more mess. Islamic
Incoming.
State or anything else. Yeah, because it's not. The original name is the Islamic State of Syria, Iraq, and the Levant. And the Levant is Israel. That's what ISIL is. You can change and tap dance around that all you want, but your original name is ISIL. And your goal is Jerusalem and Mecca and Medina. That's what you want. And that's what they're trying to do. The king of Jordan recently stood up and, called them evil and all this other stuff, and he's panicked because they're right on his doorstep. And they've had some setbacks, but I predicted Baghdad will fall by the end of the year. I'm no prophet, but, we've only got a few days before that happens. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Great point.
Excellent.
Yeah. And thank you for that, because I know other people have done work on that. By the way, those people, and I know Joe's got a question here pending, but I just want to add this: when you make reference to ISIL, I understand their objectives, but I do have a problem with ISIS in terms of the acronym ISIS. Obviously, the references to the mythological. Mythological Egyptian god.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot there, and I think that's kind of another in-your-face sort of thing taking place. And the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria being part of and the Levant. Well, that's a Western intelligence creation, I believe, but that's just based on the research I've done. So,
and I agree with you. They trained in Jordan, and then they went rogue, and here we are.
Exactly. And people following the geopolitical footsteps over there. Benghazi, why do you think we'll never get the truth out about Benghazi? Well, of course, because that ultimately ISIL is an artifact of that Benghazi operation. If not directly, then certainly at its periphery. Joe, go ahead with your question. I know that you got one from a listener.
Yeah. This one is from Eric. He asks, in the flood of Noah, can it be possible that the sea creatures and life in the waters survived? Noah saved the land animals, but no sea creatures. My guess is that those never perished. What is your take, L.A.?
Yeah, basically, yeah, I would concur with that the creatures in the sea, Noah didn't have to do anything with those because they weren't being messed with, at least the ones that we think would be. The fallen ones seem to be messing with the animals, as far as we know. There was a show recently, a couple of years back actually, about the found mermaid. The whole thing was a creation. It was just a canard. The whole show. Every bit of it. The scientists were actors. It was just somebody created this thing, and at the very end, when the credits roll by, you have to look really closely, and then you see that the whole thing is being staged. It's a canard. It's a ruse. And the idea of mermaids and mermen, and that this was going on, but the Bible is not a canard. The Bible and what is there in the historical record of the Bible, the historicity of it specifically, states some very fascinating events. And some of those events we've already touched on, specifically the Nephilim. And wherever they are, the Nephilim, the judgment by a Most High God is always the same, wipe them all out. And I think this ties in with modernity, and I've spoken to this about on your show before, specifically with the so-called mark of the beast. I think why anyone who takes the mark winds up in the lake of fire is because their DNA, this mark is actually a DNA changer. Doug Hamp's book, Corrupting the Image, my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, delves into the idea that the fallen one is trying to create man in his own image, and he's doing it with this mark. And that's what's so incredible about it. We took the implant out of this guy, Bill, in Watchers 8, and that's hardcore physical evidence. It's funny how there's just dead silence from the skeptics now on that, where 4 or 5 years ago, there was nothing but ridicule about, oh, implants, that's just nonsense. Oh, you know, who's making this up? Some childhood injury, blah, blah, blah. We experienced such high strangeness in that operating theater, and we talk about this in Watchers 8. It was over-the-top supernatural, over-the-top spiritual warfare 2.0. And I've talked about that on your show before, how we went in there and we couldn't find the implant. It was gone. Gauss meter couldn't find it. Stud finder couldn't find it. The wand on the ultrasound machine, that couldn't find it. It's like, huh? Where 2 weeks later, we found it with the ultrasound machine in less than 2 minutes. It was like it was being clothed. One prayer changed the atmosphere in that room, and the thing, the object, floats into the image on the monitor. The image just floats in on the monitor. It's like, what? It was unbelievable. We talked about that today, actually, at practice, Richard and I. It was just astounding. And we you know, it's all on film. Hagman and Hagman, it's all on film. Watchers 8. We show the whole thing, the whole process from Watchers 7 to Watchers 8. It's all scientific, on film. Guy was abducted when he was 5 years old. He's had the implant for 40 years. Here it is, X-ray, CAT scan, Gauss meter, giving off a frequency of 330 gigahertz, ultrasound machine, 2 surgeons looking at it, we know it's there. And then we show it out, and now we're in Seal Lab, and we analyze it. I mean, this is hardcore science. And what is the skeptic saying that? I mean, how can you say anything? We're making it up. We're staging it. That's really all you can say, you know. But we're not. We're not making it up. And it's hardcore physical evidence. So we're in the lab, and we're doing it. And that's what being on the trail is about. We want to get a conversation going. We want to steer the conversation back to the veracity of the biblical narrative.
Okay,
there you go.
LA, we have a few questions about something you talked about in the first hour. If we could recover this, the little ones.
Yeah.
I've gotten a few emails, and there's some people in the interactive chat who are wondering, are the little ones that you described, was this some kind of genetic difference from the giants stemming from the same race, or was this something different?
This is what we think. This is all hypothetical. This is conjecture. This is our hypothesis. The fallen one is messing with the genome. He's trying to create man in his own image. He can't get it right. This is why when Joshua and Caleb go into the Levant, there are different Nephilim tribes there, and some of the names seem to denote certain genetic characteristics. For instance, the long necks. What the heck does that mean? The terrible ones. The Rephaim. All these names seem to point to genetic characteristics. The hybridization, which is going on now, they're trying to get man to look. In other words, he's trying to create man in his own image, but they're Nephilim. The hybrid beings apparently can pass for human, but they're very strange, and they may have certain traits which are not human. They may be telepathic. They may be able to move objects with their mind. They may be able to do all sorts of things like the X-Men. So that's what we think. And that part's conjecture, and that part's a little out there. I mean, I get it. Trust me, I get it. That part's out there. But at some point in time, if we're right, I don't believe the church will be here to see it, but if we're right, this stuff will start manifesting.
Very, very